Okay, Garett, let's go. Ja, guten Tag. Es ist 16 Uhr. Willkommen zum Webinar mit Maritime Resources. Ich gucke da mal an den Bildschirm, aber meine Kamera ist hier. Ich sehe gerade, die meisten Anmeldungen haben wir Teilnehmer aus der Schweiz und aus Deutschland. Also grüezi und auch willkommen und servus. And we have a lot of people from Germany and Switzerland, so I will translate a little bit, Garett.
Okay.
We do it as always, so we will have first a presentation from Garett Macdonald. Garett is the CEO of Maritime, a mining engineer, but I think he will talk about his background some moments ago. Garett ist der CEO von Maritime, er ist Mining Engineer als Background, er wird noch ein paar Worte über sich verlieren. Ich glaube, wir fangen jetzt mal an. Wir haben jetzt schon fast jede Menge Teilnehmer. So Garett, I think we should start. It's 1 minute past 4. And maybe you can share your screen and tell us something about you and then go into the presentation.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Tarik. I hope you can see that okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Good.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. My name is Garett Macdonald, the CEO of Maritime. And as Tarik described, I'm a mining engineer. I've been doing this for about 25 years. Started my career with Placer Dome in Red Lake and Timmins. Worked on a lot of narrow vein gold projects over my time. Most recently, I led the feasibility study for Dalridian's project in Northern Ireland for JDS. And that's where I really got introduced to this project here, HAMMERDOWN. And the reason, I guess, is because they're very similar geologically. So narrow quartz veins with high-grade gold, and they're definitely very similar. So I've been involved with this project now for about 2 years, and be happy to run through our company and our thoughts on the project and what we plan to do for the next year. So this image here in this first slide, this is actually a shot of the HAMMERDOWN gold mine with the town of Kings Point in the background. So this was a very high-grade operating mine back in the early 2000s. It was operated by Richmont. They came in here for about 5 years during gold prices, of $300 to $400 per ounce. The grade that came out of this mine was around 16 grams per ton. They were running here with a cutoff grade of between 8 and 9 grams at the time. So when they closed the mine, they walked away onto other opportunities, but they left behind what we now have is around a resource of 1 million ounces. So I'll talk about some of the plans we've got for this project and some of the exciting exploration potential in the area. We'll be making some forward-looking statements. So some of the key takeaways that we hope you walk away with here after hearing the presentation. So we are dealing with, like I said, a very high-grade former operating mine operated during a time of low gold prices. So certainly it's a lot different today than it was back then. We came up with a new study in earlier this year at the end of February. We're looking really at a startup scenario for the HAMMERDOWN project, and this is the PEA study that we came up with. So what it really looked like was roughly a 700 ton a day process rate for a high-grade feed, starting with an open pit at HAMMERDOWN, with around a capital cost of about $57 million Canadian. So that gave us a nice startup scenario, 70,000 ounces a year over the first 5 years, and some very attractive economics. So with that result, we then moved into a little more work throughout the summer, some additional infill drilling, more technical work, permitting was kicked off as well. So all of this is moving its way into a feasibility study for the project, which we are just kicking off now. There's a lot of exploration potential in the area. In the early years with Richmont here operating in the low gold price, they were really focused only on the mine and not really looking around the general area. So we think there's a lot of potential. We're a well-funded company, currently with about 7.3 million Canadian in working capital. Here's our corporate structure. Current market cap around 45 million, I think right now, 7.3 million in working capital. We do have some warrants coming due here in April, and they're around 15 cents. And our major shareholders are Dundee Goodman, Sprott, and 1832. Our one analyst is George Topping from Industrial Alliance. This is the management team. Probably some names you may have seen in the past, different companies here that our team has and on the board. We've been, as a group, a lot of different projects here in Canada and international. Copper, gold, development, exploration, operations experience in this team. Just recently added a new hire on site. This is our first project hire. Perry Blanchard joined us from Kirkland Lake Gold, and he's our VP of Environment and Sustainability. So someone who's in charge of permitting the project, lives local, right beside the mine site, including as well Larry Pilgrim, who was the former chief geologist at the HAMMERDOWN project when it was operating. So a good team here, a lot of Newfoundland content, and we'll be adding to this team as we get closer to development. So in Newfoundland, here we are. We're up in the northern part near the town of Springdale and Kings Point. It's very easy to get to. There's a lot of infrastructure, road networks. All of our projects have road access, so it's a great place to work. We're here a little bit closer zoom to Springdale and Kings Point. Our projects are here on the southern part of this BAIE VERTE peninsula. This is the HAMMERDOWN project here, which I'll talk about. The Orion deposit is another gold deposit that hasn't been mined, very close to HAMMERDOWN. And our Whisker Valley project just to the northwest. This is where we have a new discovery that I'll talk about a bit more. And over to the north, we have Anaconda and Rambler, two operating companies in the general area. This is a great place for mining. It definitely is a mining district with services, skilled labor, access to infrastructure, everything that we need to develop and operate a mine here. There's some of the kids from the local school. So we do a lot of work locally with the Belmont Academy, the local school. And this is definitely important. A lot of people live in the area, work in mining. So this is definitely a mining community. And a lot of them fly in and fly out to other operations. So we're hoping that workforce will be interested in working here closer to where they live. And so we do a lot of work with them. So I'll talk about the HAMMERDOWN PEA study just a little bit. So this was the study that came out in March, roughly. And it really looked at a restart operation here. And the whole thesis of this restart was to find a low capital, high margin opportunity that can get us into production, get us into cash flow that would allow Maritime to grow the business from there. And I think we found that here with this study. Indications are that it looks like a very low capital project, really nice grades. We are looking at starting with an open pit to keep the capital down. And we're also looking at using ore sorting to minimize the dilution that we would have to take along with some of these narrow veins. The study also looked at a gold circuit in the area that was the original gold plant that processed HAMMERDOWN once before when it was operating, and is sitting beside a permitted tailings pond. So we've been talking to Rambler, the current owners of that plant. We have a letter of intent that will let us evaluate this gold circuit for use at HAMMERDOWN. Here's what it looks like. So this is the current PEA site plan. Good thing about this site plan here, it's a brownfield site. So we've got road access already in place. We're less than 1 kilometer away from hydro grid power that's available. So we have two deposits in the PEA. Both of these mines would run at the same time, feeding ore to a central crushing and sorting facility. And what we would have here is a mine plan generating around 1,400 tons a day of feed. Coming into the sorting plant, we would reject about half of that as low-grade waste. That would get backhauled into the mine as backfill. And then the product would get hauled up to the mill for processing. This is a rendering of what the sorting plant would look like on site. Very straightforward, modular construction generally, and a nice flat site with very little overburden, close to bedrock. So this is a nice high and dry location to build, close to hydropower. So the sorting test work that we've done, and a lot of it was done in Germany, actually, and some in the States, showed us that the mineralization that we have is very amenable to X-ray in optical sorting. So it's looking for pyrite particles, and that's where the gold is located. It's associated with pyrites. It's not refractory. So the test work that we've done shows us around 50% rejection rate while recovering 93 to 95% of the gold. 2 sorters would be used in series, giving us roughly a 2 times upgrade in the feed grade and keeping the dilution, the low grade in the waste, here at the mine site, so we don't have to haul it and we don't have to process it. We're doing more test work on this now. We're just collecting another sample for another round of test work just to make sure that we understand it completely, but it is a very interesting technology and it looks like it could work very well for us. So the PEA studies production profile, as you can see here, what you're seeing on this graph, ounces per year on the vertical bars, and then the blue line on this graph is the milled grade. So this is the grade of the feed going into the plant, so after it's been sorted. So life of mine, plan to mill close to 8 grams per ton. The first few years are a little higher grade at around 9 grams per ton through the plant, giving us that 70,000 ounce production profile. So that was a good result. Definitely gave us the confidence to move ahead into the next round of study work for HAMMERDOWN. Our schedule looks like this, and we're pretty much on track with this. The first half of 2020, we were really focused on the PEA study, getting that out, setting the stage for all the remaining work that would happen, getting the technical studies completed. And the one thing that we were really focused on was getting our infill drilling completed at HAMMERDOWN and Orion. We're actually just finishing a few extra holes on that now, but now we're starting to update the resource. That'll be the basis for the feasibility study next year. The permit application, I'll mention that just for a second. So we did submit it to the Newfoundland government, I think around July. So we're on track for that. It looks very good. We've got good comments and responses back on our application so far. So we're doing a bit more work just to make sure everything is, information shared with all the proponents in the government, and then we'll continue all through that in 2021. So I think by this time next year or early fall, we hope to be largely complete through the feasibility and the project permitting that would allow us to make a project decision and arrange the project financing. So that's a busy year ahead, but if it all works out, then we'd be looking at a early 2022 project startup. Okay, I'm going to talk about exploration now just a little bit. We have 2 areas that we're really interested in, and a lot of land actually that we own. We control over 300 square kilometers of property. So around HAMMERDOWN, this is around the old mine site, and this is where we think there's a lot of opportunity that it really hasn't been looked at before. We'll talk about this for a second. This is a magnetic map here showing our property around HAMMERDOWN. HAMMERDOWN and Orion, the resource that we currently have, is just sitting up here in the northwest corner of this image in this blue dotted area. And what I'm trying to show here to people and investors is that we're in a very structurally complex kind of area, but that's where the opportunity lies. And we've got a number of high-grade gold and high-grade base metal VMS targets that have been really well prospected over the years, but not that well explored. So this is a big land package. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of showings. And now that we've, this year was really spent firming up our resource, estimates and our work that would allow us to move into the next stage of development for HAMMERDOWN. But now we're starting to branch out into pure exploration and trying to grow the resources that we have that would be added to the mine plan. One other thing to mention about our projects is generally the drilling that's been completed over the years has been very shallow. I think that's true for most of the province. This is especially true here at HAMMERDOWN and Orion. Our 5-kilometer trend that we have has a very shallow drilling, on average down to 250 meters below surface. So we're running a new geophysical survey right now, a VTEM survey. It's a helicopter survey that allows us to see quite deep for structures and for VMS massive sulfide targets. So we're just finishing that off now. We will very interested to see what happens here. Some of our targets below HAMMERDOWN and Orion. We think that those are great opportunities that could probably add to the mine plan. So we'll be ready to drill those as soon as we get the information. We can drill all year round where we are, good road access into all our properties. This is a plan view showing HAMMERDOWN up here and Orion down here on the southwest. There's about a 1,500 meter gap in between these two deposits with very little drilling information in here. And this is an obvious trend that's here. And we even have a VMS target over to the northeast called Lochinvar. So this whole trend is wide open for new discovery. We've had some results here. These are largely from infill drill results that we've had over the last couple of months. An interesting one that we did encounter at Orion, which was a bit different because it had visible gold, which we normally don't see, 26 grams over 4 meters. So that's a brand new interval. We think it could be a structural feature that maybe we might be able to follow that as a shoot within the current zone. So we have one drill here right now following up on that. And we have one drill at HAMMERDOWN, just finishing off the final infill for the project as it goes into the resource. And then we did have a very interesting intersection at Lochinvar just here to the northeast, and some very high grade zinc, silver, copper, and lead over about 2.5 meters. And this is just an interesting target for us. Certainly on an NSR value, it was very attractive. I think it was over $1,500 per ton. That's interesting, but I'm not sure how big this thing is or where it might go, but it's definitely on our doorstep, and we'll continue to have a look at it. The new survey that we get back should definitely help. Okay, I definitely want to talk about Whisker Valley. Kai knows this is one of my favorite projects. I've got a few minutes left. It's a big project. We consolidated a lot of land on this project over the last year, and now we're able to look at it as one nice big project. And why we like it, two reasons. One, we're finding veins that look like HAMMERDOWN. This is roughly about 6 kilometers away from HAMMERDOWN, as you can see on this image, so we're not too far away. We do have road access into the site. And what we've really been noticing and are excited about are these veins that we've been finding in bedrock on either side of the valley. So on these first 3 images on the top, this is the Garett vein system. We do a lot of trenching here because it's very shallow, easy for us to trench. And these are some high-grade samples from bedrock on this Garett vein. This is the west side of the valley. And then on the east side of the valley, we've been locating these veins on these 3 bottom pictures. Some very good grades of gold, silver. We see a lot of copper here. That's a little different than HAMMERDOWN. As an example, picture here of Whisker Valley. So the valley kind of follows this magnetic low and high contact, these 2 red dashed lines. And this is where we've been finding these veins in bedrock on either side. We've also been finding some high-grade boulders in the middle of the valley. Here's an example of a 75-gram gold boulder with some silver and copper. I saw this boulder. It's roughly the size of the chair in your kitchen table. It's a large quartz boulder, very sharp. We don't think it's moved too far. So we ended up with a little drill program here to try and connect the dots to see if one side of the valley, these veins are connected to the veins on the other side. So we drilled a hole right in the middle, WH20-12, and we drilled that, and we intersected a new vein down about 150 meters below surface. So 5 grams over 5.8 meters, including 21 grams over half a meter and 9 grams over 2 meters. So that's a new zone, brand new. No one's ever drilled in this area before that deep. And it's right along the same trend from the one side of the valley to the other. So potentially they may be connected. And that's really interesting because that could develop a new zone for us to bring into the resource. The other thing to know about Whisker Valley is that it's closer to the Nugget Pond process plant than HAMMERDOWN and right along the highway. So very good location for this project if we ever developed a resource here. And the other reason we like Whisker Valley is the potential for a porphyry system. This is all interesting, and there's a lot of discussion here about what this deposit style really is, and we're always wondering where these veins have come from. What's creating these high-grade sulphide veins that we're seeing? We've had a lot of people out to site to see what's going on. We see alteration styles kind of similar to other copper gold porphyry systems. We're not 100% sure on this yet, but it's definitely a neat idea, and we're spending a lot of time trying to evaluate it. We're going to be flying some more surveys. We've got a few drill holes that we're planning on some of these circular magnetic features that look a lot like a copper porphyry environment. We don't know for sure yet, but it's definitely exciting. We want to find out what's here. Yeah, and we've got a 5,000 meter program that's nearly complete. Most of that was spent drilling these trenches or these veins here on either side of the valley. And throughout the winter, we're going to test some of these new targets right here. So that's about it. 2020 has been a busy year. We've covered a lot of ground. We've raised some money. We've advanced the project. We've completed over 20,000 meters of diamond drilling. And I think throughout 2021, our focus really are three things. We want to complete the feasibility study and the project permitting to move HAMMERDOWN that much closer to a production decision. And exploration, I envision us doing another 20,000 meters of drilling next year, but it really will be focused more on finding new mineralization, trying to add to the mine plan, finding new things. And that'll definitely be exciting. So that's about it. There's the summary there. We're in Newfoundland and Labrador. I can't say enough about the jurisdiction. It's a great place to work. And I think 2021 is going to be very, very exciting. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Garett. This was very interesting. Vielen Dank, Garett. Das war sehr interessant. Vielleicht noch mal ganz kurz als Zusammenfassung. Also wir werden jetzt Explorationsergebnisse sehen, aber im Fokus ist die Execution. Das heißt, dass wir nächstes Jahr schon die Machbarkeitsstudie haben und übernächstes Jahr im besten Fall in Produktion gehen. So I think we have the exploration story here, but we have also in the focus now how to get into production with the next steps next year and to start production in 22. So this would be this is the plan. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to write it into the chat or the F&A. It's called F&A here because it's German, the Q&A space. Also wenn Sie noch Fragen haben, einfach in den Chat schreiben oder in die Fragen und Antworten Funktion. And we have already questions, so I will start with the first one. Let's start with the exploration. Wir fangen mal mit einer Frage zur Exploration an, und zwar, wie verteilen sich die Investitionen? Da geht es einmal, wie viel geht in die Exploration nächstes Jahr und wie viel geht für die Mine drauf, also Instandhaltung, Fuhrpark etc. sind als Beispiele her. So we have the first questions about exploration, or let's say it's about the budget for next year, Garett. So how will the investments be distributed? So what, how much money you will spend for exploration? How many meters? How it is distributed about the different projects? And the second question is how much you will invest into the mine, into the old mine with underground, etc., vehicle, equipment, maintenance. Please.
Yeah, so next year, like I mentioned, around a 20,000 meter drill program next year is what we plan. And that'll likely cost us approximately $4 million. We've got a great situation in Newfoundland that we have a great diamond drill contractor. We've got an assay lab close to the mine. So our costs for exploration are very reasonable. So currently with 7.3 million in cash. So really our exploration program is pretty well funded for next year. As far as a breakdown between the two projects, hard to say right now, because I think that likely I would probably spend a bit more around the HAMMERDOWN site, just because that's a project that we're looking to develop. If we can add additional ounces to the mine plan, that'll definitely have an impact to that project's value. But at the same time, I do want to spend some time in or invest in Whisker Valley and really understand what's driving that mineralization that we see. Those grades are very high and very exciting. So I really want to find out, is there more? Is there a possible new resource that could be developed at Whisker Valley? that will definitely be exciting as well. So we're going to do a little bit of both, but I think that the focus will be trying to add ounces to the mine plan at Hammerdown.
I have two connected questions. One is, you can work through the winter, and what are your costs per meter for drilling?
Yeah, so we are able to work through the winter. That's the great thing about where we're located. You know, there's 2 operating mines to the north of us as well, and they operate year-round. Our cost per meter, roughly about $130 all in. So that would be
Canadian or US?
Yeah, that's Canadian. Yeah, that would include everything: assaying, drilling, labor. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question about the planned feasibility study. You already have a measured and indicated resource and an inferred resource. So you can just give us maybe a little overview. It's hard to talk about it in detail, but maybe an overview about what kind of values is the question. Do you think about for the feasibility study? Idea of what values you would like to use for the feasibility study. So how much of the resource, for example? I think that's the question. And for the feasibility study, are there already first discussions with the technicians in which area there could be possible changes to, just give me a second, to the PEA? So just shortly in German, nochmal eine Frage in Sachen Feasibility Study, also Machbarkeitsstudie, die am Ende auch ausschlaggebend sein wird. Es gibt ja schon 2 Ressourcen, eine Measured and Indicated und eine Inferred. Das heißt, man hat schon genug Material. Die Frage ist hier, gibt es schon eine Vorstellung, in welchen Werten man in die Feasibility, in die Machbarkeitsstudie gehen wird? Und gibt es hier auch schon Diskussionen mit den Technikern, in welchen Bereichen sich zu der Wirtschaftlichkeitsstudie, die man in diesem Jahr veröffentlicht hat, was sich dann auch positiv ändern kann? Man hat ja weitergearbeitet an dem Projekt. Yeah, Garett, please.
Sure. Yeah, so the feasibility study, we've kind of started some of the components of it already. Like your question, you know, geotechnical, soils, geochemistry, water quality, water management, infrastructure, ore sorting is another thing that we're looking at right now too. So, and these are all things that feed into the feasibility study. So we want to start them now so that the answers are available when we need them. Of course, the biggest component of that feasibility study is the resource estimate that you carry into feasibility. So as you know, we're not going to be using inferred ounces when we do this study. So it's only measured and indicated that we use. So, and that's why we spent quite a bit of time this summer doing the infill work, resampling areas that needed to be sampled, doing some grade control testing as well in certain areas to see how the model compares to what some close space drilling will tell us. So there's a lot of new information that will go into this study. I don't think that the scope of it will really change that much. The one area probably that might change as we go in, and I think it's a fair statement, is with some of the deeper parts of our resource are inferred. Okay, and that's really just because of a lack of drilling. With additional drilling, I would expect we could convert some of those to indicated. So I would expect you might see more surface mining in this next iteration here, this feasibility study. And that's okay, because I think that we did have quite a bit of sustaining capital in the PEA, largely due to underground development. So, and that was for some of these deeper zones. The Orion deposit, for example, went down to nearly 500 meters. So it had a lot of underground development. Since that time in the infill program, we've seen some thick intervals of near surface mineralization at Orion that wasn't seen before. It wasn't in our PEA. So those could be new ounces that would be added in. Similarly at Hammerdown, our infill program also picked up some new areas. And I know there was a really interesting hit that we had, it was press released, I think a couple months ago, 2.9 grams over 31 meters. And that was an interval inside the open pit plan, but outside of the resource. So those are nuances. Hopefully they're going to come into the mine plan and help us reduce the strip ratio in that area. So that's where we're going with the feasibility study, and we're just working on the resource update right now.
Okay, ja, vielleicht um das mal kurz zusammenzufassen. Also er erwartet jetzt keine großen Veränderungen zur Wirtschaftlichkeitsstudie, die man in der Machbarkeitsstudie, in der Feasibility sehen wird. Aber es gibt schon Veränderungen. Also so etwas wie, das hat er mit dem Orion jetzt dem Vorkommen gezeigt, der hat man tiefer gebohrt. Das ist outside, also außerhalb der Ressource, ist da aber auf sehr hohe, sehr schöne Goldgrade gestoßen, über 2-3 Gramm, aber über eine hohe Länge. Das waren jetzt 31 Meter, die er genannt hat. Da gab es auch eine Pressemitteilung vor einigen Monaten. Also es gibt schon Veränderungen hier und da, aber nicht so viel im Großen und Ganzen. Interessant ist durch das ganze Infill-Bohren. Infill-Drilling heißt ja, dass man zwischen zwei Bohrlöchern, dass man im Prinzip verdichtet, dass man mehr Daten hat, um das Modell zu bestätigen und zu verdichten. Und da ist man auf vieles gestoßen, was jetzt noch weitere Ideen gibt. Aber grundsätzlich steht ja die Ressource, aber es wird noch ein Update geben. Das heißt, man wird ja hoffentlich dann die Ressource vergrößern können. Das ist das Ziel. Okay. I think I have another question. Yes. Okay, about the tailings and the waste dumps of the old mine. What is the status? Is it good? And when did the last inspection take place here? And will there be any maintenance work to be done in 21 or 22? Noch eine Frage zu Tailings, also den Abraumhallen der alten Mine. Muss man da nochmal, wie ist der Zustand? Wann gab es die letzte Inspektion? Und wird man da nochmal in Sachen Maintenance nochmal investieren müssen? Okay.
Yeah, so when the mine was closed, it was completely rehabilitated. There's no legacy issues. At the HAMMERDOWN site itself, there are no tailings because the tailings were placed in a pond at the Nugget Pond mill. Okay, so the tailings pond at Nugget Pond is still there. It's operating, it's permitted, and it's in very good condition, inspected every year. And Rambler is running that tailings facility now, and that looks all good. At the HAMMERDOWN site, the waste rock that was created from the mine, and it was an underground mine, so there wasn't a lot of waste rock because they used the waste for backfill. But the small amount of waste rock that's there, is all reclaimed. There are trees growing on it. It's not generating acid. We've done a lot of geochemistry work. It's the first thing that we did when we came in here was to characterize the waste rock. So if we do have an open pit, and we plan to, we want to make sure that the waste rock does not generate acid. Okay, and the test work so far, and we've been running our humidity cells for nearly 40 weeks now, really has shown that the waste rock is non-acid generating. So that's a good result for us.
Okay. Maybe you can show the slide with the
yeah, sure.
With the map where you can see it.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the beginning.
Yeah, I remember that.
Ja, wir zeigen gleich nochmal die Karte vielleicht. Also das war ja eine Untergrundmine, Untergrundmine. Und dementsprechend gab es wenig Waste Rock, also Gestein, was man nicht nutzen konnte. Man hatte aber so eine, wie man es hier sieht, im Westen, ein Waste Dump und will das natürlich minimieren, dass man möglichst wenig Gestein abbaut, wo kein wertvolles Metall drin ist. Das ist auch ganz typisch für Open Pits. Man hat ja einen Open Pit und will dann in den Untergrund gehen, dass man da natürlich wenig Gestein abbaut, was halt nichts wert ist. Inspektionen etc. gibt es jährlich. Die Mine wurde ja 2004 geschlossen, war damals von Richmond Mines betrieben worden, die später von Alamos, glaube ich, übernommen wurden. Vor 2017 war das. Und als die Mine geschlossen wurde, da gibt es ganz strikte Regularien in Kanada. Also das ist in einem guten Zustand und wird jedes Jahr überprüft. Genau, ich glaube, das beantwortet die Fragen. Okay, we have another question regarding the Rambler mine. Would there be a agreement when there's an LOI at the moment, and what are the costs for transport and using the Rambler Facility? Vielleicht noch mal ganz kurz eine Frage. Es gibt in der Nähe eine Verarbeitungsanlage, Rambler, da gibt es schon ein LOI, also eine Vereinbarung, dass man zusammenarbeiten möchte. So hat es auch Richmond gemacht, als die damals die Mine betrieben haben. Und die Frage hier ist, wird es da eine finale Vereinbarung geben, weil es jetzt halt nur eine Absichtserklärung ist, eine LOI? Und wie sind die Kosten für Transport und Verarbeitung, wenn man dort das Erz hinbringt? Das ist insofern wichtig, als man braucht dann selber keine Verarbeitungsanlage bauen, was natürlich den CapEx, die Investitionskosten für so eine neue Mine niedrig hält. Und das ist ja auch hier der Fall. Please, Garett.
Yeah. So the cost to haul ore from from HAMMERDOWN to the Nugget Pond facility was about $21. That was the quote that we had from our PEA study, $21 per ton. Operating costs in the plant, we estimate close to $30 per ton. You know, and that's why we've been looking at ore sorting as a way of reducing those operating costs. You definitely don't want to spend over $50 a ton on haulage and processing when you're hauling low grade or waste. So with respect to Rambler, yeah, we do have an LOI with the company. We've been looking at the Nugget Pond gold circuit and how we would refurbish it, how we would set it up in a way that could operate independently from Rambler's current copper operation. So that's the key thing. We don't want to have an impact on their operation. We are interested in utilizing the idle gold circuit in the tailings pond that's there now. So the LOI that we have with Rambler, let's look at that and negotiate an agreement, whether it's a toll milling or a purchase agreement. We're not sure yet, but we're looking at all options, and we're talking to Rambler right now about that.
Okay, thank you. Ja, also es gibt ja diese Absichtserklärung und man verhandelt weiterhin mit dem Eigentümer, mit Rambler, und man hofft, dass man eine Vereinbarung findet, die für alle Seiten zufriedenstellend ist, dass das Gold da verarbeitet werden kann. Und Garett schließt auch keine Option aus. Das heißt, sowohl ein Kauf dieser Verarbeitungsanlage als auch eine Vereinbarung in welcher Art auch immer. Das Zweite sind bei den Kosten, da will man niedrig sein. Da geht man jetzt von den Kosten aus, die man in der PEA, in der Wirtschaftlichkeitsrechnung, zugrunde gelegt hat, also 21 kanadische Dollar. Und genau. Garett, another question. It's a little bit different from the questions we had before. Just give me a second. There's some competition in Newfoundland. Can you elaborate on this? Also die Frage ist hier, es gibt so ein bisschen Wettbewerb in Newfoundland. Da gibt es mehrere Minen und auch mehrere Projekte und Unternehmen. Ob der Garett sich mal dazu äußern kann. Yeah, please.
I don't know about competition. I know there's a lot of interest in the province for a number of reasons. The mineral potential, number one, is great. It's also a great jurisdiction to work in with skilled labor and a very pro-mining government that is actually interested in mineral development, responsible mineral development, of course. So that's really why it's drawing people there. In terms of competition, we do have over 300 square kilometers of property with a lot of great exploration potential. So I don't really feel that we're competing with anybody, but it does. I'm glad that there's a lot of interest in the province, because it certainly deserves it. There's a lot of untapped potential, in Newfoundland and Labrador that people are going to start finding new deposits and developing new projects. So I think that's good for everybody.
Ja, Garett findet nicht, dass es unbedingt Competition oder Wettbewerb da gibt zwischen den Unternehmen oder den Interessen, die dort nach Vorkommen suchen oder auch Abbau betreiben. Aber es ist einfach eine gute Mining District, Jurisdiction, und passiert da viel, und die Regierung steht auch dahinter. Also die Regierung ist da relativ mining-freundlich. Da gibt es jetzt nicht so viel andere Industrien oder andere Sektoren, die Jobs bieten. Dementsprechend ist es auch eine Chance für diese Provinz in Kanada, die ist ja ganz im Osten, am unwirtlichen Atlantik, und Ich glaube, die Leute da sind, also das ist mal auch mein Eindruck, froh, dass dort Firmen mehr Interesse zeigen und genau, da ist auch mehr möglich. Noch eine Frage bezüglich der Finanzierung, und zwar wird es ein Financing geben. Garett, another question. Will there be a financing next year, and what do you think about that? How can we think about that?
Well, next year, I'm not sure about that. And I'm not going to give an answer yes or no either way, but we do have April warrants that are expiring at 15 cents, and I think if they were all exercised, then there's I think about 4.8 million there. We really, with 7.3 in cash now, with their exploration plans for the year, feasibility and permitting, our G&A is generally the same as it was last year, or this year, sorry. I think we have probably enough to get through to the point of a project financing. And I guess what I could say is that, especially if we have some of those warrants exercised, but at the right opportunity, we wouldn't shy away from looking at raising a little bit for exploration if there's some advantage to do so. But that's really what it would be. So we'll keep an eye on it, but right now I don't have any immediate plans for that. But we'll keep an eye on it, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Ja, ich übersetze nochmal, I translate. Also momentan hat die Firma 7,3 Millionen Working Capital, keine Schulden. Im August gab es ja die Finanzierung, da hat man 8,7 Millionen brutto eingenommen, kanadische Dollar. Man fühlt sich sehr gut damit aufgestellt. Das war ein Preis von 15 Cent. Damit kommt man sehr weit nächstes Jahr, sagt Garett, sei es Exploration, aber sei es auch Studien etc. Dazu kommt, dass es noch Warrants gibt, die bei 15 Exercise Price haben, also Ausübungspreis. Da könnten auch nochmal mehrere Millionen kommen, wenn diese Warrants ausgeübt werden. Insofern fühlt man sich da sehr wohl aufgestellt. Natürlich guckt man immer, denn irgendwann wird auch der Minenbau finanziert werden müssen. Aber momentan gibt es da keine Pläne und mit 7,3 Millionen Dollar auf dem Konto ist man da ganz gut aufgestellt. Ich habe jetzt keine weiteren Fragen mehr. Wir haben jetzt auch eine längere Q&A-Session gehabt als die Präsentation selbst. Ich danke Ihnen schon mal. Garett, thank you very much. Yeah, I think this was the last question. I don't have any more questions. To everybody, if you have more questions, don't hesitate to write me, Garett, or Kai, or Tanya. Tanya is the head of investor relations at Maritime Resources, so don't hesitate to write us. And if you want one-to-one, this is possible, we can arrange that. Ja, vielen Dank nochmal für Ihre Teilnahme. Wenn Sie noch Fragen haben im Anschluss, können Sie mir, Kai Hoffmann, Tanya, der Investor Relations Dame bei Maritime, schreiben oder auch dem Garett. Sie finden alles auf der Webseite und ansonsten einfach direkt an uns wenden, auch wenn Interesse ist noch an einem One-to-One, wenn sich jetzt noch Fragen ergeben haben, die einfach aus dem Rahmen gehen, die man nicht per Mail beantworten kann. So, thanks everybody for joining our webinar and hope you stay healthy and safe and have good. And we hope the gold price will be doing good in the next weeks and months. Yeah, thank you very much, Garett.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yep. Yeah, bye-bye.